Hey everybody, the following video was taken from a stream I did where I was going from 600 to 2000 using a very specific repertoire. So just a little bit of context before we get into it. I hope you guys enjoy and let me know if you want to see the series continue. Bye bye.
Let's hope for the best. So we're playing white. So the repertoire I'm gonna suggest. Okay, we're getting a Scandinavian. First off, so we don't even get to see any of the repertoire, which is kind of funny. So they're playing that f6. I should probably play normally and not play c4. C4 is like trying to be annoying. I'm just gonna give back the pawn and just go for development. My volume output. I need to turn my volume up. Is that better? Thank you for telling me. Maybe I should talk louder or with the mic closer to me. I can always move the mic closer, which is a possibility here. Generally, I enunciate more when I make videos, so I don't really notice it as much if I stream as well. Thank you. Okay, bishop g4. Just a natural developing move pending the knight. I'm just gonna block the pin. Well, it's not really a block of the pin. It's more removing the pin, right? Because the knight was pinned to the queen, so I can't really move it without losing my queen. Now that's possible. And I'll just continue off with my development. I am up a pawn. They did go for what should have been development here with knight takes e6, but they didn't end up doing that. Instead, they're playing like this, and they played e6, developing the bishop now. So I will just castle. And all we're going to really try to do here is take advantage of the fact that we're a pawn up. And generally, when you're a pawn up, the way to play the position is to trade pieces, try to keep some pawns on the board. That's always important. I think I can get away with d4. So one thing I have to calculate after d4 is bishop takes f3. I could take on c5. And if they take on e2, or if they take on d1 first, I can always take on d1. That would double the pawns though. So I don't lose a pawn, but it would double them. I'm not sure exactly if I want to do that. I could also play something like a3. And then b4, bishop e2. I don't know if I should do that. I feel like d4 is the aggressive move. And I feel like we should be playing aggressively here. So this is the move I want to play. Bishop takes f3 is a bit to ask of the opponent. This should work out. So worst case scenario, they take, and I take on c5, and we end up making a few exchanges, but these are all piece exchanges, not pawn exchanges. So this should actually benefit us regardless. Okay, so this is not the correct move because they actually hang both the knight and the bishop. And I don't know if I want to take the knight or the bishop. If I take the bishop, this does offer an exchange and keeps the knight hanging, which is nice. They can't... Well, they can take on c5 back. I think I'm going to take the bishop here. That's actually really tricky. Okay, so should I take the bishop or should I take the knight? I want to avoid any of these moves, bishop takes f3, because then it would be hitting the queen. So I think I actually want to take on c5, because if I took on a6, they could take on c6, and that would offer a queen trade. So yeah, I'll just take on d1 here. All right, and I'm going to give a question to the bishop, ask if they want to take. If they do end up taking, it does improve my bishop and threatens the c6 pawn. They don't do that. That actually makes a lot of sense. They're attacking this pawn, and this isn't the most comfortable pawn to defend. I think I can play knight d4 though. Attacking the bishop. Asking it what it wants to do. It will very likely move back. But in that case, c6 is hanging. I don't need to take it immediately. Okay, now I really want to take on f5. This just offers more exchanges, and this is a bit of a problem for my opponent. Because now I can take... I'm going to take with the knight. Oh, Should I take with the knight or the bishop? I'm going to take with the bishop. I don't think it matters too much. Ultimately, we're going to have to remove our pieces back out. But the idea is I'm just going to be playing bishop f3 next move, making a threat. Okay, they didn't actually take my knight. So now I can keep it, and I'm going to keep it. I'll play knight g3. This is I could play knight e3, but I want to make sure I have a good development square for my dark square bishop. Okay, so we do have a winning amount of material right now. +6 is a fair amount. I'm going to play bishop e3, develop with tempo, attacking the knight on c5. h4 counterattacking isn't something I'm worried about. I can take on c5, and if they take on g3, I can just recapture with the pawn, and this would actually win a pawn. Because at the end of the day, they would have lost that pawn on h5 there. Okay, so I could take on a7, but I'm more interested in just continually improving pieces. When you have this much material, generally the best strategy is just to make sure all your pieces are doing something. So that's exactly what I want to do here. Okay, now they're defending c6. And this is a different story. Now I think I want to take on a7 because I'm threatening to win a piece. And if they move that piece, I'm also threatening to take on c6. So move like knight d7 back. Now I'm really interested in taking on c6. So they play h4. I'm just going to take on b8. If they capture, I'm just going to recapture with the bishop, and this wins a pawn. I didn't have to do that, but looked totally reasonable. I could have also taken on c6 as an intermezzo, but it's not totally necessary here. And yeah, again, winning position, but we still have to win the game. And I think the best way to do that actually is just looking at our strengths. So when you're up so much material, generally your plans can be executed with very little counterplay. So what are our strengths here? We have 3 passed pawns. And so I want to push my a pawn. I'm not really worried of them exchanging on g3. I'm just going to start pushing. Great. Okay, and a5. So I could worry about e4. I'm just going to play bishop d5 check first, just so my bishop is still covering a8. So if they push e4, I don't have to worry about it. The problem is this: there's too many ways to defend against these pawns pushing. And this threat of a7 and a equals queen is just too powerful. Yeah, I can actually just take this rook, and the pawn will just go through now. So bishop c6 check, a7, and then a equals queen. Great. Queen b7 check, king d6, and let's look for a mate here. Rook d1 check looks like a great way to start. If they bring their king up like this, then queen b5 would have been mate. Now it looks like queen d7 check, rook d6. I'm covering this diagonal, and after king to g5, we can play... Looks like there's a few possibilities of mate here. I'm going to play h4 check first. We have to be worried of some sort of stalemate. Okay, they end up actually just resigning, so that's good. We end up winning for our first game, and that was against the Scandinavian. So let's bring this to an analysis board and cover it. So our opponent played good out of the opening. C6 is totally fine, but after we take it, they should really capture with the knight. The idea of this move C6 is very strong. First off, if we don't do anything like knight f3, then they can just recapture and, well, essentially we've traded our e-pawn for their c-pawn, and they have more pawns in the center. They might even be able to claim some sort of advantage. So after we take, they're giving up a pawn for development. As we can see here, black has 2 pieces developed. We only have 1. So they're going to try to use that to their advantage. And that's how they should play. But instead, they took with the b pawn. And this is a significantly weaker way to take, just because it doesn't actually improve any pieces, and yet it still gives up a pawn. So bishop g4, good developing move. And here, yeah, they just continue on with development normally. And I think d4 was maybe something they were a little bit surprised to see, because they responded with knight a6. There is an option of bishop takes f3, as I mentioned before, and the idea is if we recapture, all of a sudden d4 is hanging, so we don't really want to do that. So if they take on f3, we actually want to take on c5. This is pretty much just exchanging one piece for another. And if they take on e2, or if they take on d1 first, that's okay. Something like this would occur. And we're still just up a pawn, but we've exchanged some pieces. And this is actually good for us because we have the extra material. And generally, something we want to do is, if we could just magically turn this into a king and pawn ending, we can see that white would have significant chances to win because we're up a pawn. So when material is reduced, at least piecewise, this just helps us. But d takes c5, queen takes d1, knight takes c5, and yeah, again, at this point, they are down a piece, and this should be losing. But as we can see, just from how I played, I was just trying to be materially focused. So if they weren't capturing any of my material, I would keep it. And if they were hanging anything, generally I would take it, or I would opt for improving all of my pieces instead, like this a7 pawn. At some point, I didn't end up taking it here. I totally could have. I just didn't see as much of a purpose. I thought just developing the pieces was better, and now it makes a lot more sense to. A lot more pieces are developed, so taking on a7 makes a lot of sense here, because the pawn is hanging and attacking the knight. There's just a ton of threats that come with it. So that was a pretty good first game, and that's gonna cover it for the start of this speedrun, which is great.